What is the one thing no one else has done in history? Voluntarily walk into Auschwitz. This is the story of Captain Witold Pilecki, a Polish cavalry officer who didn't escape the camp. He went in on purpose. In 1940, the Polish underground resistance knew almost nothing about the true nature of the new Nazi camp, established at Auschwitz. Pilecki proposed an audacious mission: allow himself to be captured to infiltrate the camp, gather intelligence, and build a secret resistance network from within. On September 19, 1940, he deliberately got caught in a street roundup in Warsaw. Once inside Auschwitz, he was assigned prisoner number 4859. For 2.5 years, Pilecki organized the resistance, performed sabotage, and crucially smuggled out detailed reports. These reports, known as Witold's reports, described the atrocities, the use of gas chambers, and the unfolding mass extermination of the Jewish people. He was the first person to reliably inform the Western Allies about the full scale of the Holocaust. In 1943, fearing discovery, he engineered a daring escape to personally deliver his final report to the Polish command. Pilecki's mission remains one of the most remarkable acts of moral courage in World War II. It's 1968. You are a journalist standing on the floor of the German parliament. A high-ranking politician is giving a speech, a former Nazi who helped deport thousands of Jews. What do? Most people would protest. Beate Klarsfeld chose a different path. She walked right up to Chancellor Kurt Georg Kiesinger and delivered a stunning physical act of defiance, a public slap across the face. "Nazi, Nazi!" she screamed. This single act launched her infamous career, the Nazi hunter. For the next 3 decades, Klarsfeld, often working with her husband Serge, didn't just write articles. She tracked down some of the most elusive Nazi war criminals across the globe. Her targets included the Butcher of Lyon, Klaus Barbie, hidden in Bolivia, and Kurt Lischka, who oversaw the deportation of Jews in France and was living comfortably in Germany. Klarsfeld's methods were relentless. She exposed their aliases, hounded them in their new lives in South America and Europe, and organized public protests to force their extradition and trial. She was often imprisoned, but she never stopped. She wasn't a spy or a soldier. She was a woman with a list and an unshakable will, proving that history will always have a reckoning. She showed the world that even after the war, the fight for justice was far from over. In the Netherlands during the 1930s, the jazz duo Johnny and Jones, comprised of Salomon Sal Kannewasser and Arnold Nol van Wessel, were celebrities. They charmed audiences with their guitar and smooth, English-inflected vocals, becoming one of Holland's most popular acts. But because they were Jewish, the Nazi occupation brought their glittering career to an abrupt halt. In 1943, after months in hiding, the 2 men and their wives were arrested and sent to the Westerbork transit camp. Westerbork, a temporary stop on the journey to the death camps, held a chilling paradox. It featured a cabaret run by the SS commander, Albert Gemmeker, to divert prisoners' attention from the weekly deportations. Johnny and Jones were forced to perform. Their music, once a source of joyful entertainment, now served as a grotesque form of distraction, played on a stage constructed from the wood of a demolished synagogue. Their most poignant act of resistance came when they were briefly let out for a work assignment in Amsterdam. They used the opportunity not to escape, but to secretly record a song, the Westerbork Serenade, a mournful ballad about the camp. In September 1944, their luck ran out. The duo were deported to Auschwitz and then through a series of other camps. They continued to hold on, but exhaustion finally claimed them. Arnold died on the very day Bergen-Belsen was liberated, while Salomon died shortly before. Their story is a haunting example of music used for both oppression and survival. A melody of defiance played right up to the final silent moment. If a government's power is absolute, is there any way to escape mass murder? During World War II, one small nation proved that a cultural code of honor could be stronger than the most brutal totalitarian machine on earth. This is the story of Albania's vow. When the Nazis conquered most of Europe, their machinery of extermination followed. In country after country, Jews were rounded up and deported to the death camps. But in Albania, a small Balkan nation with a predominantly Muslim population, something extraordinary happened. The moment the first Jewish refugees arrived, they were offered sanctuary under a national code of honor called Beza, which literally means to keep the promise. This code decreed that a host must protect any guest, even at the cost of their own life. Local villagers gave Jewish families traditional Albanian clothing, changed their names, and hid them in their homes, treating them as honored guests. When German troops demanded a list of Jewish residents, Albanian officials refused, claiming they only had lists of Albanian citizens. By the end of the war, Albania was the only country in Europe that had a larger Jewish population than it did at the beginning, successfully saving nearly every single Jew within its borders. They called it the Paper Brigade. Imagine the year is 1943. You are a prisoner in the Vilna ghetto, surrounded by death. The Nazis order you to participate in the destruction of your own history. Every book, every poem, every sacred scroll written by the Jewish people over centuries must be sorted for shredding. Do you cooperate or do you defy them? A small, brave group of poets, librarians, and scholars chose defiance. Risking instant execution, these men and women, including the famous poet Abraham Sutzkever, smuggled thousands of priceless texts and manuscripts out of the Nazi warehouse. They hid Torahs under floorboards, stuffed original Yiddish poems inside their clothing, and buried entire archives in underground bunkers, determined that even if they did not survive, their civilization would. The mission of the Paper Brigade was not to save lives, but to save a culture. Their secret archives survived the war, a profound act of spiritual resistance that ensured the voice of their murdered community would never be silenced. In an extermination camp designed for mass murder, what is the ultimate act of resistance, escape, or revenge? This is the incredible story of the Sobibór Uprising, the most successful revolt and mass escape from a Nazi death camp. In the summer of 1943, Sobibor's small population of Jewish forced laborers, who were kept alive to run the killing center, knew their time was running out. They formed an underground cell led by a Polish Jew, Leon Feldhendler. The real turning point came with the arrival of a transport of Jewish Soviet POWs, among them an officer named Alexander Pilecki. Pilecki used his military skills to devise an audacious plan: systematically kill the SS officers one by one during the day, steal their weapons, and lead a mass breakout. On October 14, 1943, the prisoners lured 11 SS guards into workshops and murdered them with axes and knives. The entire camp was plunged into chaos. As the prisoners, nearly 600 people, realized what was happening, they rushed the barbed wire fences and braved the surrounding minefield. Over 300 made it to the forest. While most were later hunted down, approximately 50 survived the war. The revolt was so devastating to the Nazis that they immediately closed and dismantled Sobibor, erasing all traces of it. It was the only time Jewish prisoners effectively shut down a death camp. It was known as a retirement ghetto, a place where elderly and prominent Jews were supposedly treated humanely. But Theresienstadt, or Teresien, was a lie. It was a transit camp and a horrifying political stage managed by the Nazis. This is the story of the Great Deception. In 1944, international pressure forced the Nazis to allow the International Red Cross to inspect Teresien. The SS was meticulous. They spent months transforming the ghetto into a fake model camp. They planted flower gardens, built a fake cafe, painted the barracks, and staged an orchestra, a soccer game, and even a mock children's opera. They temporarily shipped thousands of sick and starving prisoners to Auschwitz to reduce overcrowding, then filled the streets with healthy-looking residents wearing new clothes. The visit itself was a carefully choreographed tour that lasted only a few hours. The Red Cross delegates, seeing the surface pleasantries and hearing the rehearsed testimonies, were fooled into reporting that the Jews were being treated well. Within days of the inspection, the cameras left, the decorations were torn down, and almost all of the people who had been forced to participate in the charade, including the performers and children, were deported to Auschwitz and murdered. The Theresienstadt deception is one of the most cynical and chilling acts of psychological warfare in the Holocaust, a meticulously staged spectacle of death. What if a high-ranking Nazi officer decided his loyalty to his conscience was stronger than his oath to Hitler? This is the story of Major Karl Plagge, a decorated Wehrmacht engineer who arrived in Vilnius, Lithuania, and witnessed the genocide being carried out against the Jewish population. Plagge, who had become disgusted with Nazi ideology, made a quiet life-or-death decision. As commander of a military vehicle repair unit, HKP 562, he began issuing official work permits, Scheine, to hundreds of Jewish men, certifying them as essential skilled mechanics. The catch: many were academics, dentists, or artists, not mechanics at all. Plagge protected them by making them indispensable to the German war effort. Crucially, he insisted they bring their wives and children, arguing that only this would ensure the men's focus. Plagge effectively established a safe haven within his compound, risking execution for helping Jews. His most heroic act came in July 1944. As the Red Army approached, he gathered the prisoners and, in coded language, warned them that he was leaving, and that the SS, an organization devoted to the protection of refugees, would soon take over. The Jews immediately understood the terrifying message. Over 250 prisoners went into hiding in walls and bunkers, the largest single group of Jews, to survive the Holocaust in Vilnius. Plagge, the German Oscar, is a testament to moral courage within the machine of murder. The year is 1936. Berlin is buzzing, hosting the Olympic Games, a grand spectacle intended to showcase Aryan supremacy to the world. But amidst this chilling propaganda, a quiet act of defiance unfolds, particularly for a Jewish athlete whose dreams were brutally crushed. This is the story of Gretel Bergmann, a German Jewish high jumper who was one of the world's top athletes. As a young woman, she was told she could not train at her local club due to Nazi race laws. In 1934, she moved to England, where she quickly dominated the sport, winning the British high jump championship. The Nazi regime, desperate to avoid international boycotts of the Berlin Olympics, pressured her to return to Germany, promising her a place on the Olympic team. She reluctantly agreed, understanding it was a chance to prove Jewish strength. Gretel trained rigorously, isolated from her teammates, yet consistently clearing heights that would have secured her a medal. But just 2 weeks before the competition, after the international scrutiny had subsided and the American Olympic team was already en route, the Nazis enacted their cruel deception. Gretel received a letter stating she was not good enough and was officially barred from competing, replaced by an athlete with a much lower qualification. The injustice was profound. Gretel watched from the sidelines as the German team, without her, failed to win gold in her event. Her exclusion served as a stark example of how the Nazi regime's racial ideology superseded athletic merit. Gretel later emigrated to the United States. Her story highlights the individual human cost of the Nazis' dehumanizing policies, even amidst the global spectacle of the Olympic Games. What if you could make the Gestapo back down? In 1943 Berlin, as the Nazi regime reached the height of its power, hundreds of German women accomplished what no army or politician could. They successfully stood up to the SS and won. This is the story of the Rosenstrasse Protest. In February 1943, the Gestapo launched its final major roundup of Jewish residents in Berlin. They arrested nearly 2,000 Jewish men, but these men had one thing in common. They were all married to non-Jewish German women, a status that had previously given them some temporary protection. The men were imprisoned in a building on Rosenstrasse, awaiting deportation. Within hours, their wives, German women, mothers and daughters, began to gather outside. The crowd quickly swelled to hundreds. For a week, day and night, in the freezing cold, they stood their ground, chanting one demand: "Give us our husbands back!" The SS aimed machine guns at the crowd and threatened to shoot, but the women refused to move. The German authorities, terrified of a public disturbance in the heart of Berlin that could break civilian morale, made a decision unprecedented in Nazi history. They backed down. One by one, the men were released. Nearly 2,000 lives were saved by the sheer stubborn courage of a handful of German wives.